we talked a little bit about over the phone about 2020 just being such a year of like home and having to be more discerning about where we spend our time and who we spend our time with, and we like trimming a lot of fat out, just whether it's people or situation, and so I think all of us had to, whether we wanted to or not, get super comfortable at home.
Absolutely. Luckily, I love being at home.
Well, obviously you've made this, haven for yourself. What do you think is what makes something home to you?
I think a house is like something that is always changing and like evolving. So I always have like different projects. I'm always adding something here and there, but I also feel like my house is like a playhouse. And I have all these other little like places where I love to like craft, create, different artistic spaces. So like, I cook and I garden and paint. And so like I can be in here in this house and I can like rearrange a table or like, rearrange a little room in there or something. And then it's all of a sudden I can like go back and garden or, go paint. I feel like a house needs to have like all the things you love in it too.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, a lot of
Where's your grandmother?
She's out at her house.
Okay. Where does she live?
She lives just next door to me. Come have some tea. Come have some coffee. Help yourself.
I'm gonna go to the.
Oh, it's right in there. The door slide shuts and the toilet paper's in that basket that it looks like a cobra should be in it. I did have a fake snake in there forever, and then someone I think almost had a heart attack. Like, it was a little much. Yeah, so brilliant. So this is the gold mine community, which I always appropriately call it. Me and my cousin call it the G spot. I mean, we're real Appalachian through here, believe it or not. That's a lot of the recipes in my book have an Appalachian flair to them too. Like goose feed, chocolate gravy, all kinds of stuff. So I started cooking with my grandmother. I mean, I guess like child labor. And they're crushing blackberries. I got to do like the fun stuff that she didn't want to do. It was fun for me, but also like usually the messy stuff. We have like all of the old like card catalog recipes and all of that too. You'll see I've been like digging through a bunch of these old like cookbooks and stuff. Like that's where I get a lot of inspiration from. Everything back then definitely had a white sauce on it. There's no recipe in the books for white sauce. It's just like, you better know white sauce, if not you're screwed. If you don't know white sauce, you shouldn't be using this cookbook. The cabinets were already here, and they were like avocado green. They were from, like I said, this one, it was a fabric warehouse and little store that my grandmother had, because the mobile home business was really big here, so they outfitted those. So these were avocado green, sprayed them white, and then I did all like 2x12 wood countertops, which I love. And then a lot of the paintings that you see in here are family paintings. So like my Aunt Estelle did those, a local artist did the others. And then I love to collect on like crockery and have all different kinds. And do y'all know what this is for? So you feel the breeze off of it? So this was a fan they used like you know, for years, either like in a kitchen workspace like this. And so like as you were working over your workspace, it would be pulled to keep flies off the food. And we made that one out of barnwood. I didn't want to put a light over this, and I saw one of those in Garden and Gun and was like, I really want one of those in my kitchen too.
This is like a
Rolling pins, water dipper. A lot of old like wooden tools that are made by local people that are signed. I love that, like this. So, you know, I love the old like hand-hewn tools. It was the old washing machine. So back in the day, you would wash on one side, and then you would like the wringers that you wring the clothes with would go on the other side. And that's the top that I used as the backsplash for it. So this biscuit recipe seriously is the easiest thing. Super easy. 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I don't ever sift it because who has time for that? And I've already added 1 cup in there. And then you need 2 tablespoons of baking soda. So you can use all-purpose flour for this too. If you do, you need to omit the salt and baking soda. But I would suggest I always keep all-purpose flour on hand because all-purpose flour, you can make anything out of it. It's one of those like kitchen pantry essentials. So 2 tablespoons of baking powder. And a lot of biscuit recipes only call for like a tablespoon. Some even call for half a tablespoon, but I want those like really tall, thick layered biscuits. To that, I'm gonna add half a teaspoon of salt, and then I'm gonna add half a teaspoon of sugar. So you can either do a whole teaspoon, and I just did like have butter on my hand, so I almost dropped this. That would have been really entertaining too. So, and half a teaspoon of sugar. So we're basically equaling out our teaspoon by salt and sugar. We also have our psychedelic like 1960s music playing in the background too. So you just want to like take up a wooden spoon. I always use wooden utensils when I'm making like biscuits or any kind of bread. And I also do it in like a porcelain bowl because a lot of times if you're baking, if you're using baking powder, you're pouring buttermilk into it, and a lot of times they will react with a metal pan. So always you try to use glass or some kind of stoneware. So just stir your dry ingredients up. And this is the real secret. This is 1 stick of butter. Would say that you chop that in small chunks, but it looks like I chewed mine. So any way you cut it up is absolutely fine. But the key is definitely have it cold. So that's just 1 stick of cold butter that I've chopped up. And you can use a pastry cutter. You can use a fork to kind of get that in, but I really like to use my hands because your hands warm up the butter just slightly, so you can really cut it into the flour perfectly. Just kind of take the butter like that and rub it into your hands and into that flour, and it's going to disperse pretty quickly into the flour, and you'll just have to work with it. If you have kids, this is a good job for them. This is the job I've always done with my grandmother. I was telling Haley and Sarah earlier that I always got the jobs that were a little bit messy but perfectly fun for kids. And work that, like I said, until it resembles like coarse crumbs. So almost like a cornmeal kind of consistency, and make sure it's just distributed all through the flour. It'll end up distributing more, and it's actually good if you find little flakes of the butter inside the biscuits, because what that does is it's going to give us that really nice like interior of the biscuit itself. So to that, I'm going to pour in 1 cup of milk. So if you have buttermilk on hand, definitely use buttermilk. And if you don't, use a whole milk. Whenever you're doing any kind of like baking, or whether it's something as simple as biscuits or cornbread even, definitely always use a whole fat content of dairy, because you really need that fat to make your biscuits perfect. So you want to stir that together just until it comes together, just like so. And if you're making this in a large batch, you can always pour your milk in if you're a little unsure as needed, and then it's not like such a huge commitment. And you may need to adjust. And depending on the temperature, really, when you make biscuits, sometimes they just all come together and sometimes they don't. Luckily, today's the good day. So we're still working with our hands here. It's just inevitable that this is going to get, your workspace dirty, but that's a biscuit. And then I'm going to take it and just give me a nice little bit of butter. I'm really in the butter mode today. little bit of flour on top of our dough here. And then I'm just gonna take it and plop it right down onto that flour we have on our board. And this is the real secret here. People get up in arms on how many times you're supposed to fold over biscuit dough. And, you know, I really don't think it matters. You don't want to overwork your dough. When you roll it out, when you drop it onto the board, you'll feel how light it is. And if you continue working this dough, it's just going to get a little bit tougher and tougher. But what I like to do is I just kind of like gently fold it over and form it into a rectangle. And for the thickness here, I usually like about a 1/2 inch or inch thickness. And you'll love this. So this is, my grandmother and I used to always use just little cans. That's what we used as our cutters. I still use the same can because it's like the perfect size biscuit. And then you just want to cut out your biscuits. And I have a cast iron buttered dish over here. I really like to cook biscuits in cast iron. I think it really, it generates a lot of heat, which gives you like that good crispy crunch that you want on the bottom of your biscuit. And you can see when we're cutting down into it, all the layers there, how they kind of like spring up. That's from all the baking soda. Of course, there's always like one biscuit there at the end that you have to roll all the flour up and create. And that's always the fun biscuit. I used to love that biscuit as a kid because it goes in the middle, but now just give it to Murphy. And if you have leftover dough, you can totally, you know, take this dough, depending on the size, and it freezes really well. You can freeze this. So take the biscuits, cut them out, and wrap them in saran wrap, and you can have fresh biscuits anytime. I'm gonna cut out 2 more here. So this makes roughly, depending on the size, you know, 8 to 12 like good sized biscuits. So you want to pop these on a well-greased sheet, pop them into a 425-degree oven, and they will cook roughly like, you know, 20, 25 minutes depending on your oven. I have gas heat, so mine cooks at a quick rate compared to an electric oven. You can, when we go around back, you'll be able to get some good shots of them. We'll grab a couple too. They're starving. They'll like eat me out of house and home. So you can either like take a little bit of butter as they start to brown, or you can just like dab buttermilk on them too, either one. My buttermilk, if this could even be possible, had kind of gotten a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Buttery. And then I'll put them back in there for, you know, a few more minutes.
cookies.
Serve us some biscuits.
Crunchy on the outside.
Good, huh?
Awesome.
The perfect biscuit. So I've always, like, you know, of course, you know, in doing all this, you have to be a little bit creative, and, you know, in food, whatever you're in. So I've always been, and I have a pretty creative family too. So, you know, my dad's real into woodworking. My grandfather was, you know, he had a welding business. So, you know, we're definitely like doers. So I've always been an artist, and it was like, when did I do my first trash painting? It was like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. I guess I did my first one back in like 2012 or something. And like mine are in between like sculptural, and they're abstract, but they're actual like objects or things that belong to one person or one place. And I mostly only use white paint. And like if the objects have color, then I let the objects have color that comes through too. We had a lot of like letters, correspondence, as well as like photographs. And I just love like old handwriting, whether it's like recipes or a letter. You know, I think it's so beautiful. So I have them scattered all over the house too. I like a little bit of like history thrown in there too. I'm real into nature, so like I've always collected like fossils and different like things, you know, wasp nest. And so this is made out of an old barn door from down at that barn. And so throughout the years, people have always like found snake skins in their barn, so they bring me those. But yeah, you know, I'm a collector of things too, as you can see. So we have quite a lot of stuff. Oh, that's a duck egg. So the Donnas, which are the ducks, they lay like the most massive egg that I put under glass that I thought was so huge, and then I've gotten them bigger now. Whoever reaches in there, we cut off their hand and feed it to chicken. And then they like, it's like almost believable. That was my grandmother's too. That was my grandmommy's.
My grandmother had one too. It's a sewing basket.
Yeah, and I think the original fabric is probably underneath there, but I have not wanted to rip it apart yet. And this has no scale because it's like a collection of different eras and things. And it kind of looks like my house, oddly enough.
When did you get into?
I've always been into miniatures.
I know, but when did you? So you have the dollhouse. When did you begin, like?
Oh, this was a COVID project.
A donkey?
So that came with a Model T car.
Oh.
And so, you know, it was open. And so that's why it's weighted, is because you would like put the blanket over you, yeah, as you were like riding.
Wow,
Yeah.
I love that. How did you know that?
So the granddaughter of the owner gave it to me as a gift. So she's had it all this time. Clearly, I guess, you know, they either didn't travel much in the winter or, you know, it's Alabama and never cold. So I guess that's why it never had any use. But it's almost like because it's just like an assemblage of different pieces. And these are cool. So do y'all know what these are?
Wait.
So these, and you know, are a skewer.
Like a skewer.
So they're called Hadley skewers. So they're Victorian. And so back in the day, you know, when you would have like aristocracy for dinner, so you had these big cuts of meat that would run throughout the table, and this would be like stuck on top with like black truffles, mini lobsters, and like gherkins, and they were just merely for decoration. Betty. I'm gonna get Annette's too, her daughters, but I'm gonna have to put them in separate rooms so they don't talk shit.
Or something that says Betty.
No.
I saw the lipstick. Was that all hers?
Oh yeah, all those. That's some of my art too. And so like everyone that knew Betty, I'm always like, say hi to Betty when you're here. One of my favorite family pieces, we can go look at it if you want, is in my bedroom. And it's an old Victrola, and you pull out one side and it's the record player, and then you pull out the other side and the radio. And I need to get a new needle and do some work on this, but otherwise it still works. Rare. And so like sailors would, you know, be out spearing whales, 1838, in the South Atlantic Ocean. It always, you know, I was always had a mouth as a kid, so one of my dad's bus drivers said I was either going to be a politician or a preacher, and either one of them were worth a piece of shit. I never discussed politics or religion or royals.
What about?
The only queen in this house is me.